America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. We're going to start with county today. Brooke.
Hi, I'd like to call the County Commissioners meeting of October 26, 2022 to order. Announcements. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Is there any public comment for items not on the agenda for the county, not the town of Nantucket? I can't, assuming there's no one in the room. I don't see any hands raised.
Nope.
Okay, all right. Any new business?
Nope.
Okay, approval of the minutes and warrants. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
By roll call vote, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
and I vote aye. And the next item is a request for approval to establish and provide initial funding for county other post-employment OPEB trust fund. I'm assuming Brian's gonna.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Chair. So what you have before you is a request to adopt Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 32B, Section 20, which would create and adopt the legislation for the creation of an OPEB trust fund. The reason that we're bringing this forward to you is that in June 30th of 2022, we had to have the OPEB valuation. The unfunded liability in the county is $473,000. And given that the fact that the county over the last 2 years has had fairly good years and has fund balance that could support this, we asked the OPEB actuary to run it and suggest and say, if we fully funded it, what would we have to contribute today and what could we get for a discount rate to do it? And if we funded it today, we'd have to put in $355,000 to have it considered to be fully funded. So we'd saving $118,000 today to do this. The county has had 2 fairly good years and does have the fund balance to support this. So we think this is a positive step for the county with the employees as they retire. We won't have to use the pay-as-you-go method. We will have a fully funded OPEB trust fund that will be able to pay those benefits for the retirees as they come on to the retirement health benefits. And it will certainly help ease the increase in expenditures for the county over the long term. This is not to say that annually or biannually we won't have to put in additional money for changes in terms of the healthcare inflation and changes in the funding, but the large infusion to fund this will be taken care of today. So we think this is a prudent step. So before you have a motion to adopt section, as I said, Massachusetts 32 section 20, and then to authorize the treasurer to create the OPEB trust fund with the investment company, and then authorize the funding of the $355,000. I think it's 213 as noted in the motion. So we do think that this is a reasonable and prudent request and opportunity for the county, and we'd like to take advantage of it.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Any questions or comments from the board? Just speak up because I can't really.
Yeah, it's Matt. I think it's it's amazing. It's great. There's only a handful of towns that are fully funded on both the town and the county. This is a really good step. It's kind of like what we've been trying to do,
Right.
And it's it's prudent, it's conservative, it's the right thing to do, and I'm glad that we're doing it. Thank you.
I'll move to the motion that's written in the packet. Move to approve with that motion.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. By roll call vote, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay. Any commissioner reports or comments?
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. By roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well.
Thank you, Brooke. That was fun to make a motion every once in a while. Say so moved and
You're a little
motion.
rusty, huh?
Yeah, it felt good just for a minute. Okay, we'll call to order the select board meeting of October 26th. It is 5:34. And no changes to the agenda. Announcements, Libby?
This meeting is being video and audio recorded. The warrant for the May 6th
2023 annual town meeting is currently open for citizen warrant article submittals until November 14th at 4 p.m. And our health director is going to give a quick update on COVID vaccine availability, but I don't know if he's on yet. He was running a bit late. If he's not, we'll have to come back to that.
No, not yet.
Okay. We'll have to come back to that. That was basically it for announcements.
I had the committee vacancies that I added.
Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong.
Do you want me to
agenda.
do those?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sure. So we have some committee vacancies as of right now. We are looking for somebody to fill a vacancy on the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have one seat with a term expiring 2024. We have 3 at-large seats for the Harbor Plan Update Committee, which the board just established a couple of weeks ago. That terms for that will end upon the completion of the work. And we are still advertising vacant seats on the Agricultural Commission, 2 seats for that, and the Tree Advisory Commission. There is a timeline online, as well as the notice of the committee vacancies. Everything is online. We have advertised on the town's website, and we're going to be advertising the committee vacancies in the Enquirer and Mirror starting this week. And applications will be due on November 10th at noon. And then we will have the applicants' committee packages in the board's agenda on November 16th and November 30th. And then on December 7th, the applicants can come and introduce themselves, review their applications, and you will be making your appointments.
Thank you, Erica. Any select board announcements or comments to get started? No. Okay, there's no follow-up comments from prior select board meetings. Is there any public comment here tonight for items that are not on the agenda? I'll give that a second. See if anybody online wants to raise their hand. Okay, we'll move on. There's no new business that I know of. And approval of minutes for October 15th and approval of treasury warrants.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Don,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
Jason, aye. That passes 4-0. And over to our town manager's report.
Thank you. First off, we have fiscal 23 first quarter budget reports, and we are going to take up the water department first. Mark?
Is there a particular page you want me to start at?
No, it's okay. Thank you for letting me go up front. So it was a pretty strong quarter, very good summer for us. Revenues were actually up. Part of that was up 186,000 in connection fees. A lot of that had to do with the project on Old South Road. They had some bigger portions of that open up, so those were big bulk, 15 to 20 connections at a time going in, and that's the reason for that. On a good note, our late payment fees have decreased by 18%, and our turnover transfer fees that we get when we transfer ownership, that's down 46%, which is kind of telling us that, I think that's based on the real estate market and lack thereof, I guess. A lot of the houses sold. So those fees were down, but we were making it up in water connection fees. And the water sales fees are almost dead even with last year. So last summer, 21, for July, August, and September of 21, we did about 322 million gallons of water. In 22, we did a little over 350 million gallons of water. So we had an increase of close to 30 million gallons over the summer. Again, a really dry summer. We didn't have to get into water restrictions, but we were getting close. This kind of rain that we're having now is helpful. For operating expenses, everything kind of stayed the same, running on par. One of the big jumps in our line item for professional services, if you notice on that, it went up from right around 8 to 10,000 in a quarter to 42,000 for last quarter. A lot of you might not know, but we lost a pump in July, and we had to get that fixed right away. So that took a little bit extra money to expedite that. But that's what that difference is. It's more than our usual, but we got it done, and we were lucky to find, I was told the last submersible pump that fits our equipment. That was on a shelf. It came all the way from Ohio, but we got it here and got it in. And disruption was okay. Luckily, it was up and running days before the veranda fire. So that's where that comes from, that jump. Everything else is kind of almost the same as last year and status quo, and we're doing really well.
Are you facing sort of the supply chain issue still?
Big time. So as David will mention, I'm jumping in with him on this sewer force main project, and we were told some of the parts are 48 weeks out, not 428, 48 weeks out for some of the brass parts for the water connections. We're making changes in our spec. We're dealing with all of our distributors right now and all of the warehouses and supply houses that we get stuff from. Brian and his team have been a great help. We used to do 3-year contracts. All of them are refusing 3-year contracts, and they're giving us 1-year contracts because they can't even guarantee the price for that year. We just opened some bids again to get those contracts going, and one of our suppliers actually put terms that end in December. He wants to give new prices in December. We can't find the stuff. I've talked to other towns. We're not alone. We're actually sharing. There's water companies on the Cape, and talk to the people on the vineyard, and we all kind of have an idea of what we have. And if somebody has extra of something, we'll obviously give it out to somebody else. But it is going to be a challenging next, 48 months. You call that a year. It's going to be tough, but we're finding ways around it right now.
Thank you, Mark. Brooke?
So I was wondering whether you've considered buying critical parts and having them in inventory.
Yes, so we're putting I guess you're finding out about this now, Brian. I was going to call you tomorrow or the next day. We're working on our next year's budget, and we're going to increase our inventory line by a lot. And we're going to dip into retained earnings is the plan, and to stock up completely. And when I say stock up, I mean buy 2,000 of a part, not 200 of a part. And actually, the supply houses are telling us the bigger orders are coming first. So if you put in that big order, you might not get all 2,000 at once, but they'll send you 500. And they're running their lists that way. So when it comes to like hydrants, valves, corporations, all over brass, everything, we're going to make a substantial order for hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get ahead of this curve and have enough.
Is most of this stuff from the U.S. or some of this from overseas?
Yes, so part of our bid package, a lot of the stuff like on the job that's going on now, it has to be U.S. steel. So it's an issue, and I know the manufacturers are working on it. And I think what's happening is a lot of them don't warehouse product anymore. It's manufacture as order. So you order it, they make it and send it to you. And I think that's the slowdown.
Yeah, you'd be shocked how much is China. Not necessarily this stuff,
Yeah.
but things like King Arthur flour bags are from China.
Right.
And you'd be shocked at how much comes there. And it was, you couldn't get into the country. It was so backed up, and that's loosening up a little bit. And the prices are coming down a little bit finally, which is good news for everybody.
Right. Our prices have actually come down a little bit on the supplies. They're still up probably on some items, 20%, 25%. But a few months ago, it was 60, 75%. So the prices are coming down. Now it's just trying to find them.
Right.
You have questions for Mark?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Libby, do you want to go to Roberto real quick?
Oh, is he on?
Yeah, he just got home.
Okay, sorry, I'm at a conference. So as far as COVID, as far as the
Hey,
COVID
Roberto.
update, yes.
I just wanted to say the reason why you were late.
I think he's kicking people out of the
Did he
room.
just leave?
Sorry, I had to commandeer a room here at the conference. I'm at the Mass Health Officers Association, and I just got elected as the Region 5 representative to the board of directors. So that's why I'm late.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you. So So as far as COVID goes, I know I had to give an update on the flu vaccines and God damn it. So, and then as far as the committee, the flu vaccines go, we have the signups available online through the CDC Color program. I'm gonna have to leave. Sorry, this is ridiculous.
We don't hear anything. We only hear you.
I feel like I'm watching late night TV. He's going out to talk to the crowd or something.
He might be in a stall here pretty soon.
Hey, sorry. The flu, give me just a second. The COVID vaccines are available once a month. We're working with the state to provide the vaccinations. I just ran out of the rain. You can sign up at the Board of Health website. We are capped right now at, I believe, 175 doses per vaccine clinic. And then I really don't know. I'm lost now because of the whole thing.
Yeah, we just talked about the COVID vaccines, and is it, where are they being held at? You said
There we go.
175 doses per place? Is that per Nantucket or
Per
per?
month, or what's the?
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Just needed a moment to calm down. So what we need is 175 doses per clinic. We are scheduled for one clinic a month. The good news is the state is now offering $75 per dose through a gift card. So that's really good. Sign up through their program on the state. I know Dan's Pharmacy is also offering this, is also offering the bivalent vaccine. And you cannot sign up for the hospital's dose unless you're also signing up through their flu clinic, because you can get it on the same day. And I think that's only for specific populations, the at-risk population. But please, we sell out really quickly. Our 75 spots get booked really quickly. So keep checking every day once we announce it. And then the vaccines are given at the elementary school cafeteria off Bacchus Lane on Saturdays between the hours of 9 and 2 p.m., 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And after that, I think I'll just take the questions.
Brooke?
Yeah, Roberto, I've been hearing from people that they're struggling to get access to vaccine again. And I'm wondering, are we limited to one a month, or can we increase to more than one a month if the demand is out there?
We can increase for as long as the state is offering the program. We actually also ordered 300 doses from the state. They're limiting us to 300 doses per order. So I know Heather has already given a lot of those to homebound and immunocompromised, but we're trying to increase that rate as well.
And how would people access those? Reach out to the health department or?
Yes, please reach out to us, health@nantucket-ma.gov, or call us, ask for Heather Francis, actually Heather Downey now. And we can get you either signed up to the state clinic if there's still spots, or we can schedule it directly with you.
Okay.
I haven't really looked into this, so it's still a little new. So only the town, through what you just said, it's only COVID vaccines that you can receive? Or you said there's Dan's Pharmacy and then there's a hospital option, but only if you're getting something else?
Yes, so their hospital has been offering it through their flu vaccine program. We keep hearing mixed messages, so I'd like to get clarification from them.
Yeah.
Because often, if you call the hospital, they're going to push you towards us and vice versa. So it gets really awkward. But please just call us and we can figure it out.
Okay. And what's happening at Sherburne? Because I heard some people are being pushed to Sherburne Commons for a COVID vaccine. That could be flu or.
That could be, I know the flu vaccine was being done at Sherburne. I haven't heard of any COVID.
Okay.
I know the VNA is looking to do a vaccine clinic as well. But I believe theirs is also flu. And I think that's where the confusion is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Matt?
but I read somewhere online that Sherburne was doing, either it was Cape Cod nurses or visiting nurses were doing COVID vaccinations once a week, I believe.
For a certain age group?
I think it was anybody. But
Oh, okay.
I read it online. I didn't check to see if they had. I actually did check, and they didn't know they had availability for 1.5 of the days, and they didn't on the others. So I think they had something at the end of this month, beginning of November. It could be gone now, but
So I think everybody got a little, not eased down a little bit, but maybe wasn't paying attention as much. And now that it's getting into the fall, everybody's kind of scrambling. They're getting, like you said, Roberto, they're getting confused between flu and vaccine.
Yeah.
It's moving around. So I'm sure, is all this on the website, or you could at least call your department and get it figured out?
Yes, please, you can, the best source of information is to call us, call Heather directly or ask for Jericho as well, or myself. We can get you the information. 508-228-7200. The extension, actually call the front desk. So the extension would be 7009. But that would be the best source of information. Come to us.
Okay. Thank you, Roberto. Any other questions?
yeah, my comment. A few people have contacted me, and they had tried so many times that they just eventually figured that it's not available here anymore. And so that's why we brought it up a couple weeks ago, and I'm glad we're talking about it. And so is there any way, Roberto, to gauge demand? If people go on multiple times and can't sign up, is there a way that anyone is tracking that and knows?
So we are trying to gauge demand on that. Unfortunately, the website does not track the hits of people coming in looking for doses. And that's a state website. So I don't have access to any of that information of the traffic. But we do know, as we're getting the clinics, we're getting only about 10 calls or so from people saying that they haven't been able to get it. And those are just a representative sample. So I would say the number is closer to about 50 each time. But if you are off island, I highly recommend hitting one of the pharmacies because they have it readily available.
Roberto, what's the current guidance right now for different age groups? If you only had 2 shots, could your third? Should everybody try to get it?
The vaccine is available right now, 21, I believe, 2 years and older, I believe is the number now. 2 years or 5 years? 5 years, sorry. 5 years and older. 2 doses at the minimum to be fully vaccinated, to what we call fully vaccinated. But you are available to get the booster after 6 months of from your previous vaccination.
Is the suggestion from whatever CDC that everybody should be vaccinated, or is it for just, compromised health, or where are we now?
Everyone should still be getting vaccinated. Just like the flu shot, we push it out to everyone.
Okay.
Flu shot is everyone 6 months and older.
Thank you, Brooke.
So while we were chatting, I went on the MGH patient gateway, and they could find no appointments on Nantucket for either a flu shot or a combined flu and COVID booster. So at least through the gateway, there's nothing available. The other thing I wanted to share was I had a recent exposure to COVID myself, and the CDC has a great calculator on its website as to how long you should quarantine, what the protocols are in terms of what you should do and not do, based on whether you've had COVID or whether you've been exposed to COVID. I found it extremely helpful with an exposure for my husband and I to figure out what we should do next. So I would encourage people to check that out on the CDC website. You plug in the date, date of exposure and symptoms and so on, different variables, and it tells you how long you should stay home or how long you should wear a mask after you are allowed to go out in public or recommended, and so on and so forth. Really, really helpful.
Thank you, Brooke.
Yeah, the CDC website will always be the best source of information for vaccination.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Roberto, and congratulations.
Thank you. And sorry about all the confusion and the noise out here. They always do a happy hour after the last meeting, so everyone is there and they're already drunk. So I'll see everyone soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to the budgets. Noah Carberg, Assistant Airport Manager, is going to take us through the first quarter budget for the airport.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm really going to stick to what's in the packet and in that order. So from the financial highlights page, as of quarter one fiscal year 23, total revenue is up 29% over year to date fiscal year 22. The major driver of this increase is the total increase in fuel revenue, although there were also increases shown in other areas such as rental income, fee income, and vehicle income. On a macro picture, our total operations are down 11%. As a reminder, an operation is a takeoff or a landing. So JetBlue E190 that lands and then takes off is 2 operations. But meanwhile, enplanements are up 4% over this time last year. The result is an airport that's handling more passengers and producing more revenue on fewer operations, which really does bring about multiple operation and environmental benefits. From the expense standpoint, total expenses are up 102% over last year. The main driver is the increase in fuel price, notably Jet A. Over the last year under consideration, our wholesale costs went from, on average, $2.85 per gallon to $4.44 per gallon. You might recall that the airport has been a beneficiary of FAA COVID stimulus over fiscal year 22 and 23. And the way those are reflected does need to be taken into consideration when looking at our total fuel expenses. What the analysis shows is that our total fuel expenses are up 1.5 million or 81%. But what's not reflected is that in fiscal year 23, we applied an ARPA grant towards our cost of fuel. In fiscal year 22, we applied a different grant, an AC GRP grant against the cost of fuel in a different amount. I'll save you the math, but at the end of the day, the apples to apples comparison for true fuel purchases. Fuel purchases are up $2.1 million or 63% in this quarter of 23 over fiscal year 22. The payroll expenses are also an anomaly as they still reflect a CARES Act grant reimbursement. For this fiscal year, quarter one are true payroll expenses. And these true payroll expenses for the first quarter are up $200,000 over the previous year. And this is really mainly due to a long tenured employee retirement and payout. Moving to the summary tab. Just a couple of quick points for fiscal year 23, the 3 months to date. Our revenue was just under $16 million. This is about 80% of what's budgeted, and that's typical. After the first quarter, we usually realize 75 to 80% of our revenue, as well as 30% of our expenses. Over the next 2 quarters, those numbers do begin to flip on us. So while we are projecting a fund balance of $4.4 million, I also always like to remind people that we do use that to pay off projects instead of taking them long term. We don't necessarily roll that over into retained earnings. We have a fuel revolver tab. For the first 3 months of this year, we have already exceeded the fuel revolver cap, and we've applied $628,000 into our operating budget. That flow over to our operating budget will continue for the rest of the fiscal year. On the revenue tab, I just wanted to point out again for fiscal year 23, the quarter ending September 30th, Jet sales in excess of revolving fund, $628,000 have flown over into operating so far. For the first quarter of the previous year, we had not hit our revolver cap at that time. So that's why that's reflecting no balance. I'm sorry, no expense. I'm sorry, no revenue. Rental income and fee income, there are a couple differences that are really just due to the timing of receipt of payment or payment. I think, Brad, that's a cash versus accrual accounting mechanism. Vehicle income has also come back after the pandemic. On the expense tab, the first item for payroll and salary, again, we're reflecting actual payroll this year as we're no longer setting payroll against CARES grant receipt. And I already mentioned the difference in fuel to make sure we were comparing apples to apples. And I think that completes everything I had prepared. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, just how much in total did you get from ARPA or CARES Act money, just ballpark? And there's no more coming, correct?
Correct, there's no more coming. Matt, I think our initial CARES Act grants from the first tranche was 6.2 million, and then among the remaining two grants, maybe around 1.2 million apiece.
No. So 9, 6, 7, 8, maybe between 8 and 9 million total.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah, all right, thank you. So that's almost a year and a half of your budget.
It ended up being significant.
Yeah,
for,
no, that's substantial. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noah.
Thank you, Noah. David Gray, Sewer Director.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Quick update just on our sewer project. I know a lot of people are asking questions. We are moving along. It's slow going. We've made the turn now onto Center Street after getting through that very tight corridor. Our next slowdown will be at the big tree that's right there across from the anchor inn. We're under strict protocols of how we're supposed to treat any roots or not touch the roots. Dale or someone will come down and handle the roots for us. As Mark was saying, supply issues are just really hitting us pretty hard. And what we're going to end up doing, especially on Step Lane, is we're going to install the water main itself, but we're not going to install any services or taps because we don't have the materials. That way we can get that road paved for the winter and getting it buttoned up and just closed in. We've been working with the Veranda House folks and the people next door and trying to get their infrastructure in the road when we're there so we don't have to dig it up 3 times. So that's been going along well, and we're working down on South Shore as well. So it's going along.
So David, does that mean that you'll close the road and then have to reopen it just to put that stuff on, or is that?
We will, unfortunately, and it's just because of the supply issues. He can't get the corporations that actually tap into the mains to bring it out to the houses. And then because a lot of the homes are so old, they have 3/4 inch services. He can't get the reducing adapters to go from 1 1/4 or whatever down to 3. There's none anywhere. We've both been calling all over the country to try to get stuff. So it's going to be a little bit of an inconvenience, but luckily there's not many homes on that street.
Right.
We are going to be putting services in for the Veranda House, very larger services and a fire service. So that stuff, we have those materials already. So
Right.
it's really been a struggle. So
Could you put it from I'm just thinking, you probably thought of this, could you put it from there to their property so we're not, digging up the road? Could you put a larger one and let them step it down on their own?
Well, what we're finding up there is there just is not much room at all, and something that we've come across and we anticipated is a lot of homes already have still have existing lead services, and to try to transition that within the town right away before we put it would be easier for them to come in one swoop and get it all done at once, so that you don't want to disturb those lead services more than once. So, it's like you were saying with materials, we can't get citric acid, one of the most common chemicals on the planet for soda and everything. it's costing us $10,000 a pallet
Wow.
to clean our membranes. So I didn't want to get off sidetracked, but I just wanted you guys to have an update on the project because it is moving along. And
It's too bad when we finally start doing everything at once, we can't even do it. It's too bad.
I mean, we've had pipe in our beds for 8 months already. Just we had to buy it ahead of time for the main pipes. So to get into the fun stuff, we're doing okay. The numbers say maybe a little bit differently, but it has to all do with timing. The same thing happened last year with tax bills going out or different people being around at different times of the year. So the numbers aren't concerning at all at this point in time. That we'll probably see a big difference in the next update that we do. Sewer permits and sewer fees are up. The permits coming in the door are just incredible on a daily basis. We're probably issuing anywhere from 20 to 35 a week, still ongoing. And a lot of it that has to do with a lot of renovations, picking up houses and putting foundations in, et cetera. So that's been, it's nothing to be of concern at this point. Again, it has to do with the timing issue. We saw the same thing last year, and it was very alarming when I first saw it, but I was anticipating it this year. Operating expenses, we're still sitting about the same way. However, like I said, some of the materials we're having to buy are, we're going directly out of Canada for our citric acid. And some people are selling it for close to $300 a bag, and we were able to get it for about $152. So you got to do a lot of shopping around, and it's a lot of work, but it's saving us some funds. Although it's expensive, it's still saving us some thing. Our professional services, like Mark said, are definitely up. Again, it's because of a lot of the projects that we have going on, where we need to have that outside engineer or a consultant come in, or a vendor with specialized training. So we're up some in that area, and we're trying to keep the utilities and everything down, but supplies we've definitely seen some numbers in the supplies. Other than that, there isn't really anything else jumping out at me or Brian's staff. I don't know if there's any questions. I don't want to try to keep everyone here all night. So I can move right into the questions, or we can continue going through.
Questions?
Quick question: is the citric acid the same you would use in soda? Is it?
It's a food grade product.
Food
exact
grade,
same
okay.
stuff.
Okay.
And I assume you must use it in.
I don't really use it, but I know someone might, so I'll ask.
Yeah, it's
Might have
we've
access.
gone through trying to go through different vendors. I've called and talked to Coca-Cola and everything like that, and it's just like, we're still struggling to get bleach it occasionally. So
How much citric acid do you need?
well, we go through probably 12 pallets a year. And all it's used for is to clean the membranes so that we can keep operating and keep everything in order. We're starting our cleans right now, and we've already gone through a pallet and a half. So as soon as we get down another pallet, I'm going to try to put in another order to get a hold of. But if you know a source somewhere, that would be sure be a big help.
I'll ask. I'll find out.
So, other than that, not much else to report.
May I ask, the sludge disposal number's up quite a bit. Is that?
There's an increaser in the sludge report, the number from Waste Options on a yearly. We do 12 payments a year to Waste Options, and they go up 2%, 3%, like that. Yeah, they have a automatic increase every year, and I think we're up to about, I think it's like almost $25,000 a year. Every time we have a quarter go through, so the numbers are up. It's not because we dewatered more. It's just the numbers, because we can take an unlimited number out there, and it's a set fee every month. So,
Thanks.
No, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks very much, David. Okay, next, our transportation planner, Patrick Reed, is going to give us an update on some bike path, pedestrian, multi-use path projects. We have sort of an internal group that reviews these projects on a semi-regular basis, and we just had a meeting a week or two ago, and we thought it might be a good idea to update the board. There are a number of projects that were delayed due to the lack of a transportation planner for quite a while. But Patrick is working hard to get them back on track, and there's a presentation in your packet that he's going to take us through. Patrick?
Sure. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I don't know if it's possible to bring up the packet.
Yep, 1 sec.
Thank you very much. And while we're bringing this up, I guess I'll just start off by mentioning that I'll be speaking to you tonight about a couple different projects on 2 prioritized lists. So you can go ahead and jump to slide 2 there. Thank you very much. And what you see on this list represents a compilation of bicycle and pedestrian related transportation projects. And these are prioritized based on point of contact. So you can see some are slated on the sort of the plus MP and EDC side and some on the DPW side. But obviously we coordinate very closely to make sure that we're working in tandem to advance these projects. And we've also prioritized these not just by point of contact, but also current workflow, meaning that the things that you see higher up on the list are pushed up on the list because they have sort of open plans, grant awards, things like that. And while I work on the MP and EDC side, I've been actively supporting the DPW's efforts. So I'm happy to share a little bit about the projects on that list as well. Tonight, I'll be focusing mostly on the Wawinit side path, the Orange Street ped bike improvements. This is also referred to as the in-town bike path. So a new phase of it that's primarily focused on Orange Street between Goose Pond and the Rotary. I'll also be speaking about Milestone Road and Sparks Williams and Pleasant, that larger Complete Streets project. And while I won't spend much time on Tom Nevers or Newtown, I just wanted to note quickly that the town has identified resources to advance its feasibility study for Tom Nevers into design. So we're working on that. And then for the Newtown path, the town's also initiated the procurement process for a third-party contractor for that project. Next slide, please. So first, we'll talk a little bit about the Wawinit Road side path. I'll show a graphic in a minute so you can kind of orient yourselves. But this project is intended to develop a safe, separate bicycle facility that connects the Pulpus Road side path with the Wawinit Gatehouse. So folks have asked me in different forums, so why is this a high priority? And the reason really relates to grant funding that's already been awarded to the town. In 2016, the town was awarded $283,000 or so to initiate design services for the path through the Federal Land Access Program. We lovingly refer to that as FLAP. It's a federal discretionary program, and it's run by Federal Highway Administration's Eastern Federal Lands Division. And what it does is intended to support access to federally owned or maintained lands. And in this case, the idea is that providing a connection in our network between points out in town and points northeast really improves access to the Nantucket National Wildlife Refuge near Great Point. It's an 80-20 award, meaning that 20% of the total value of the grant request would be needed would need to be supplied by the town. So you can see on the graphic there's a slight chunk of change there from the town that we would have to provide to help support this project. So it's a little bit funky how this happened, but and atypical, but also a good thing. And in 2018, while we had not advanced our design yet, we were awarded again an additional $1 million for construction. That again, that's not very typical. Typically, you have an engineering estimate, and then you're allowed to go back in and ask for additional construction support. But in this case, they just gave it to us through the work of my predecessor, which is excellent. And then in 2022, we've asked for additional support again in the amount of $832,000 to support construction once the design is complete. In this case, the good news is that the bill or the bipartisan infrastructure legislation revises discretionary programs, so no match is required in this particular round if we are awarded. So we'll hear soon about that one, hopefully. So again, no engineering estimates complete because design services haven't been undertaken, but we sort of have a high level estimate that this project will cost in the ballpark of $4.85 million. Right now, we're working with Federal Highway on the memorandum of agreement for the project so we can initiate design services. And the MOA would lay out general expectations for funding, design schedule, opportunities for outreach, things like that. The last item we're ironing out is a little bit technocratic. Typically, the use of federal aid has to be on publicly held land. And today I kind of had a conversation with folks over at Federal Highway about confirming that easements are still eligible to use federal aid for, just to make sure that we can have our ducks in a row when it comes to placement of the facility and what we need to do on the right-of-way side. Next slide, please. So you can kind of see a graphic here. You might want to note that the map orientation had to be adjusted to fit everything on the screen. So you see the north arrow. It's a little funky to have to do that. But where you see the purple line and green line start, that's Pulpus Road, where the bike path terminates there at Pulpus Road. And the purple line extends out to Pocomo. The idea here is that this would probably project. And so after we design the full project, it's likely that we'd have to, based on resources, construct this in phases. So ideally the first phase would go out to Pocomo, and the second phase would be the full extent of the project. The other thing I'll note here is that green line, it shows the path hugging the roadway layout, but typically what's done is a process that shows a number of different alternatives. And it could be the case that the path may be better suited to deviate slightly from the roadway at certain points. This is all preliminary, but the idea here is like avoiding the culvert at Squambrook, for example, could significantly reduce costs and environmental impact. I put the wetlands on this graphic too, to kind of show that it will be a challenging project. There are a number of wetlands around, so that will certainly be a constraint, but I think it's an excellent project. And we've had a number of neighbors reach out to us in support of this project. So we're very happy to see this one moving forward. Next slide, please. The next project I'll talk to you about discusses the Orange Street ped bike improvements, again, also called In-Town Path. Previous work for this project resulted in pavement markings around 2018. There's about $47,000 left on a contract from that previous pavement markings contract. And we're in the process of rescoping work to take a look at what we can do to improve biking and walking between Goose Pond, where that railroad path terminates, and then points east near the roundabout or the rotary over there. Do we anticipate that costs for the design will exceed the remaining funds on our previous contract? Because we'll need to do some resurvey work, we'll have to coordinate utilities and do some standard environmental work. And we do also plan to think about how we can do public engagement for this project too. But the idea here as we rescope this would be to look at how to facilitate walking and biking on the north side of the roadway. And in a couple of minutes, I'll show you a graphic with sort of the grand picture of why that's important. Next slide, please. Before I show that graphic, I will kind of speak to the Milestone Road side path extension, because you can kind of see the big picture once you think about Orange Street and Milestone together. So Milestone is a project that town staff has been working on in coordination with contractor GPI. It's a side path extension between Monomoy Road and Pulpus on the north side of the roadway. So you do have that path on the south side of the roadway. This would create a bicycle connection on the north side of the roadway. Preliminary plans are complete, but we've been coordinating with MassDOT on access permitting and potential safety improvements at Pulpus and Milestone, that intersection there. So the original engineering estimate for the project without any intersection improvements was roughly $609,000, but implementing the safety improvements might push project costs up a little bit, just above $1 million. We're going to continue to coordinate with MassDOT to see what we can do to move this project forward. We definitely want to make sure it's a safe facility, but we also want to make sure that we can continue advancing progress in terms of safety as well, and rather than getting hung up on the perfect rather than the good. Next slide, please. So I think this graphic right here gives you the overall picture, right, of east of town. You can see in orange, those paths that are shown in orange are completed today. And what's hatched in blue are those two connections that we're looking at. So where this cursor is hovering right now, it's the proposed Milestone Road side path extension. And you'd see this on the north side of the roadway. What this does is create a bicycle connection between Monomoy and Pulpus. So it reduces the need to cross. And then on the Orange Street, the proposed Orange Street side path, if we were to be able to get a path on the north side of the roadway there, you'd have a continuous safe separated facility from Goose Pond Road over to the Pulpus side path. And that's great. Avoiding having to do crossings at the Coffin Rotary is something that we've thought is really important. We have been aware and coordinating loosely with the land bank on their Consu Springs idea. It's a great concept, but I think we want to be clear that the path that we're looking at right now on Orange Street is sort of a separate project. Next slide, please. Another project that we're looking at is Sparks Williams Pleasant Avenue improvements. So this project is a larger project, and the streets represent numerous separate segments that were noted in the town's approved Complete Streets Prioritization Plan. And the town was awarded us a small grant a couple years ago through the MassDOT Complete Streets program to sort of implement improvements along those segments. Well, that award has expired because we haven't had our design advanced to the point where we're ready to construct yet. The DPW and PLUS worked together recently to reapply for funds with MassDOT. They helped us out with that, and we showed them our 2021 concept plans, and they were enthusiastic about our potential to apply in this round. One thing that we wanted to kind of highlight here is that this is a very large project, right? And in order to advance it in a way that we felt like was feasible and realistic, the DPW and our staff at PLUS kind of worked together to think about how we would prioritize segments for the project. And with our recent grant application, we note that the priority here would be a sidewalk connection on Williams, on the north side of Williams Lane, continuous sidewalk on the south side of Pleasant with upgrades as needed and warranted on the north side of the roadway, and then improvements to the existing sidewalk on Sparks. Now, the current concept plans that we have also include a share use path on, or what I call a side path on Sparks Avenue. That path, we decided to push to a separate future phase. And the rationale here is for a couple different reasons. First off, there's a development project on that roadway, and we're still trying to figure out what we would do on Sparks Avenue would sync up with that potential future development project near where the Downey Flake is. Additionally, we wanted to be sure that we could provide a safe facility. Right now, the concept plans show a path that's adjacent to the roadway, and we're hoping for something that can have separation. But in order to do that and increase that buffer between the roadway and the bike pedestrian facility, we'd have to really look at how we can fit everything in the right-of-way layout. And we'd also have to look at how everything works near the cemetery, because obviously we have to be sensitive to the cemetery and its needs as well. So that is a much more complex portion of the project. So that's why I got pushed to a future phase. And the idea here is to try to tackle the fruit that might be a little bit more lower hanging first. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, before we move on, the next steps for that Sparks Williams Pleasant project are the staff is going to work with the contractor to move the concept plans, the portions of the concept plans for Pleasant, Williams, and that smaller chunk of Sparks between the roundabout and the rotary into 25% design. Next slide, please. So one project I wanted to call to folks' attention, just because it's important in the sense that it previously was the #1 priority on the region's long-range plan, is the Mill Hill Connector. So this was a path that would connect the Prospect path with Old Farm Road to get out points west to other cycling facilities at Nantucket. And it was sort of like the first phase of a larger project to kind of work all those western paths together. We had this designed a couple years ago, but in coordination with the land bank, ultimately it was decided that it would make more sense for them to take on this project to do the design work for it, so they could be sure that whatever the product is integrates well with their proposed park plan. And so they'll be moving this one forward. And you can kind of see a draft here of a very, very high level concept. They just push the path over a little bit points west. So that way that park space could be maintained and open for the uses that they're considering and proposing in their concept. Next slide, please. A couple other non-motorist items of interest. We've been working with BPAC on existing paths to think about signs and how stop signs and things like that integrate with our network and how they integrate with users of our network, both bicyclists, pedestrians, and vehicular drivers, or vehicle drivers, or motorists, I guess is the easy way to say it. So we have been working to create lists of stop signs that face shared use paths with the intent of ultimately removing these. The problem here with these signs, when they're not at major intersections, is that they create sort of a confusing expectations for drivers. As you might have experienced, most bicyclists, for better or for worse, don't tend to comply with these stop signs. But as a motorist, you're driving along and you have this expectation that someone's going to stop. And that's sort of a problem. And so from a safe systems approach, what we're really working on these days is to not to design how we wish people to behave, but to design how we know people will behave and to try to accommodate mistakes. Because even though we know there's a stop sign there, you're supposed to stop, we also know that making a mistake or choosing to make a mistake, the consequence should not be the loss of life or limb. And so that's sort of the rationale for that. The other thing I wanted to call out here, I'll back up a little bit. We're doing that work in tandem with the idea that we'll be putting signs at the vehicular approach to shared use paths on intersections that don't have them today, that would encourage vehicles to stop or in some cases yield as appropriate, so that there's an understanding that there is pedestrian and bicycle traffic across these shared use paths. The other thing I wanted to call out was the long-range plan. All of the projects that I spoke about earlier today are in our long-range plan. The region has to update this every couple of years. The kickoff for our required update is happening in November. So the long-range plan will ultimately prioritize the list of eligible project candidates that could receive federal aid. And so the idea here is that the MP and EDC will just be looking at the list of projects and thinking about how to prioritize them. And so all of the projects that you see, they'll remain on the list, but it could be the case that some are prioritized or de-emphasized depending on the direction that we receive from the public and the direction that we receive from the MP and EDC. And with that, that's kind of the quick update that I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Patrick. Brooke?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I am delighted that the question of stop signs on bike paths is going to be addressed finally. I know that I think there are 10 stop signs on the bike path between my house and the building the select board meets in, at least 10 or 12. And I think people just don't pay attention to the ones that are important because there's so many in between that are not critical for the biker to stop. So I really appreciate it. And I also think it gives us an opportunity for enforcement. If we're having stop signs at the critical intersections, we could maybe perhaps some informational enforcement so people understand the importance of stopping as a biker on those particular intersections. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, just on the Pocomo, I've had people contact me over the last, 5 or 6 years. And what I've been telling some of the individuals out there is if they wanted to go quicker, they should contribute, as happened in Hummock Pond, et cetera. And so, I think that's been the message, and it's good to know some of them are reaching out. One of the concerns is that it has gotten so busy at Pocomo Point in that general area that it's unsafe for people to even get from their houses to the bike path. They can't bike there anymore. The road is too dangerous. So if they want to bring their kids or their grandkids down, they have to get in a car, put all their bikes in to get to the bike path. So at some point, it would be nice to have it all connected, which would be amazing.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Patrick. It was a great update. Appreciate it. A lot going on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And there's actually even more than that we talk about at our meetings, but these are the highlights. So Patrick, thanks so much. And everybody else who's been working on this. The next town manager report item is continued preliminary review of town-sponsored warrant articles for the 2023 annual town meeting. I'm just going to go over with you what has occurred since we last discussed this on, I think it was October 12th. I just tried to highlight the items that have changed. So, and some of this is just sort of administrative. Revolving accounts, we are going to add town housing to the annual authorization for these accounts. We have some additional housing units that have been acquired, and the rental payments need to really go into a revolving account. I forgot to put it on here, but we also will be adding a short-term rental revolving fund, which was approved at last year's town meeting, but we just need to add it into the list of revolving accounts in Article 4. Number 11 there, it says appropriation fiscal 2024 enterprise funds operations. We are working on establishing a stormwater enterprise fund. We may have to provide some sort of initial funding to it because it's going to be a while before we start generating any revenue that would go in there. But the idea is that we are working to establish a kind of a division of stormwater within the sewer department, and that would need to be funded outside of the sewer revenues. So we are working on that.
Libby, can you remind me of the short-term rental revolving fund? Is that pretty much what we did at town meeting 2 years ago, decided not to do it?
This was approved via Article 39 at the 2022 annual town meeting, and you and the board, this is the regulations that the select board and the Board of Health adopted.
Okay.
And there are fees associated with that, which will go into the revolving
Got
account
it.
to help
Okay.
pay for.
Thank you. I was missing something. Thanks.
Yes, sure. General bylaws, I just wanted to point out that when we discussed the first one there, micromobility devices on multi-use paths, I mentioned that there had been an inquiry about this from a citizen who I think is on the meeting, Seth Engelberg, and Seth and I had communicated via email about this. I didn't know if you wanted to see if you wanted to say anything about it.
Sure. He's got his hand up. Go ahead, Seth.
Hold on.
Oh, once Erica connects you in.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, Seth.
Hi, so thank you, first of all, for reviewing this. I know I sent a letter to the select board previously about this topic. I apologize for not being able to be at the October 12th meeting. I was off island for a conference, but this whole topic, I think, is becoming more of a critical planning priority over the last 2 to 3 years. I did some review of the bylaws when I started seeing these devices proliferate in 2020, 2021. It seems like currently Chapter 98 of the town charter, or of the town bylaws, is pretty specific about not allowing micromobility devices, but there's clearly a documented use on island. I don't think there's been any enforcement on that section of the bylaws. And I think also, as referenced in my letter, there's a clear opportunity here to embrace some of these technologies, to hit on some of the strategic transportation plans that the select board has already identified. So I had prepared, actually, for last annual town meeting, a citizen warrant article about this that I never submitted because I was hoping that it would come from the town itself. So I'm here today really to ask the select board to consider getting in front of this and updating the bylaws and putting appropriate regulations into place that would consider what types of devices are allowed, any restrictions on speed, safety equipment, etc., rather than us just going for a ban on these devices or just allowance of these devices. We need to consider them carefully, but I think we're missing a huge opportunity if we go straight to prohibiting these devices on Nantucket. I'll say that I'm not an expert in this field. I don't have any financial interest in this field. I don't have any educational background in this field. I just feel as a citizen that there's opportunity here, and I'm happy to take any questions related to this.
Thank you, Seth. Matt, do you have anything?
I don't have any questions. I think, Seth, I think this will be a good topic at BPAC to possibly come forward as you hope. I think that BPAC has had it on the agenda, hasn't discussed it yet, but knows it's available. So.
Jason?
Yes. Go ahead.
So I would say they're going to be used. They are being used. They are going to be used, and I think setting up a reasonable set of regulations that are comprehensible to people. Enforcement is always an issue with miles and miles of multi-use paths and shared, but having some regulations so that there can be consequences if someone is found to be not following the guidelines. And then also, I think particularly when I look at the e-bikes, there are different classes, and just being clear what's allowed and what isn't. And they are important because people are using them as transportation instead of automobiles. And I think that's really important.
Thank you, Brooke. I know at BPAC, we're looking at bringing on the executive director from Mass Bike to talk to us about the new regulations that just came down from the state, how that could affect us, what other towns are doing. And then we also could bring in town council if we needed any review on bylaws versus regulations. Could be a combination of both. And then Seth, did you already send that, what you had proposed last year? Did you already send that to us, or was it just kind of included in your email to us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have not sent that as a submission yet. I essentially started writing it and never completed it because I thought it would be best to pursue what we're doing now to have this discourse. I can submit what I had begun to write if you like, but it's not really that helpful in my opinion.
That's okay, even if it's just the points, it's somewhere to start, because you've already been thinking about this, and then we can get BPAC on it in the next couple of months and try to have something ready. I'm not for, just so where I'm at, Seth and I talked a month ago recently. Like you said, Brooke, it's going to happen. There's a lot of people, we want people to use these. We want people to not have cars. We want to give them safe places to ride, and this is very cheap for a lot of people to just get a electric scooter, and electric bike prices are coming way down. I think it's going to be more education, spot enforcing, backed up with some regulations and bylaws. So I think it's good to talk about it now and get it started. And whatever we have to do for this town meeting, let's get that in now, and then we can mold it as we go.
I think there needs to be speed limits of some type, or certain electric bikes shouldn't be flying along the bike path. I told the story of the older man who was, sort of permanently injured from a couple of people on rental bikes racing to the boat at the end of the day. And, and that's just one. We don't, who knows how many other incidents similar to that happened this summer. We don't really know. It doesn't, not something that anyone tracks. And I think, and like last year I had three employees injured. So I do think that I think it's smart that we're working on it and kind of putting some parameters around it.
Yeah, well, there's the bike paths, and then there's the roads.
Right.
All these devices are also on the roads, on Washington Street, different places. Seth, did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
So just a couple things that I would like to see as action items right now. And just for the public also, I forgot to mention this, who may not be familiar with what we're talking about, micromobility. In my letter I submitted, there is a good document that talks about what these devices are, but they're most commonly e-bikes, e-scooters, and other electronic passenger mobility devices. So I agree totally with what everyone said today. I'm not asking the town to have complete regulations in place before town meeting. I think having this go to BPAC like it is going to is great. I know at MP and EDC, we're also talking about it. I know that transportation planner is aware of these issues as well. I just am concerned that if we don't get some initial updates into the bylaws at this town meeting, then there's going to be efforts to, have citizen warrant articles looking to just completely ban these micro mobility devices. So all I'm asking for right now is that, the select board and town administration and town council figure out how we can put something in for town meeting that would be a stopgap to allow us to plan effectively, and then to have the appropriate town committees and town staff do this planning right. I mean, I don't want to push it too quickly and get a wrong outcome, but I also want to make sure that we've put in place the protections regulatorily that we need to do the planning right. So that's what I'm asking for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Anything else on this? Board? Okay.
Next, as you can see, I have a strikeout through the wording there that says paid parking. And that came about because I think we are not proceeding with paid parking just yet, pending the establishment of the Parking Advisory Commission, which the sort of mission membership of which hopefully will be on your agenda next week. And I just wanted to point out, I put short-term rental regulations under there, TBD, and actually that should have been under zoning. And I think we know that, and I think you all may have had some discussion about this, these zoning, and they're not really regulations, it would be a bylaw. This is quite possibly not going to be ready for the 2023 annual town meeting due to the timing of getting the work group set up, the meeting schedule, the issues that the committee is already work group is already dealing with, and the timing of when a zoning bylaw would have to have a public hearing before the planning board and that type of thing.
But I was going to say that I watched their meeting last night and they're worried. And I think to do it justice, do it properly and get the right data, I think I would be shocked if they could pull it off that quickly.
Next, home rule petitions. Sorry.
Can I just ask, should we be thinking about presenting that at a special town meeting in the fall instead of trying to rush it for this spring?
I think that is a discussion that the work group is probably going to be having, and that is certainly an option.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Home rule petitions is the next category. And I just wanted to note, there's a halfway down there, fertilizer ban. We had a citizen article approved at the 2022 annual town meeting. Again, it's a home rule petition. It is pending before the legislature. Its passage is, I am going to say, very uncertain. So I had a note, do we want to try to amend it or have a new one that might have more likelihood of passing? So I have been discussing that a little bit with town council. We haven't really progressed it that far because I kind of wasn't sure how the board felt about that. Is that something you would want us to look into?
Yeah, I'm okay with. I mean, obviously it did pass for a reason, but there might be something that would be more passable at the state level.
Yeah, there was another
would have, not as broad.
I think there was another process to go through as well, which we maybe want to re-explore. So there was that. And then you all discussed at your October 12th meeting, 5-year terms for select board, and that would require a special act. So I just have a note, potentially proceeding with that, and I would need to have town council, start writing it. Or do you want to hold that discussion for a potential reestablishment of a government study work group or committee or group of some kind? Brooke and I attended, I think we mentioned this a couple weeks ago, a Mass Selectmen's Association sponsored form of government webinar recently through Mass Municipal Association, and she and I talked about getting the manager. There were 3 managers, 1 retired, 2 current, who were discussing the various forms of government that they have experienced in their town or towns. And we talked about trying to get them on one of your meetings to give a kind of an abbreviated presentation, and they've agreed to come on November 16th. So I don't know if you might want to hear from them prior to a final decision on the terms.
I would, there's 2 citizen warrant articles proposed to investigate a change of our form of government. And it seems to me that making this change might be premature if that conversation gets legs. So I would be more inclined to see where those go at town meeting before I propose a change in our terms.
Dawn?
I was actually kind of thinking the opposite, because we'll be discussing other forms of government, that it might be wise for us to come up with an alternative that that makes this board function better in my mind. That was why I had suggested it in the first place. I think that the turnover and of having one board member up each year, and the learning curve, things that I already brought up before.
Yeah, I agree with Don. I don't think that it's one or the other. I think we could do both. We could look at another form of government, but put this in place. And I don't think we should wait for the government study, because that will take another 2 or 3 years, or wait for the other results. I think this is something that might help town. So.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to go forward with it. And the more we talk about it, we might end up not liking it, or a change of government could take 4 to 5 years, and this could be in place.
Yeah, this would need to be phased in as well.
Yeah,
But there's got to be some math done on how the terms would go forward.
So consensus at this point, proceed on that?
Yes. Sorry, Brooke.
That's okay. You guys are way more experienced than I am, so I yield to that.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay. Continuing on, we had added a couple more real estate related items and some discussions with the land bank. And the health director let me know that we should renew our septic loan fund authorization. This is a program through the state, and it's been very, very popular. So we're running low on from the last authorization. So this would help that program. And that is pretty much the updates from last time, unless anybody has anything else you want to add, or.
Anything? Anybody?
Okay, in a couple weeks after the citizen warrant articles are in, we'll give you another update about what those are.
We have, can we go to Deanne? She has her hand up.
Thank you, Jason. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to address the issue of the short-term rental work groups, the timing of their recommendation. I think it was the expectation of town meeting last year that a work group would be impaneled and bring forth a recommendation for this town meeting. And I think it would be really, I too watched the meeting last evening. I think it would be really helpful if the select board urged the work group to perhaps redouble their efforts so that they could come forward with a recommendation by this town meeting rather than delay it. Because what will happen is there will be a number of citizens articles, and it could really derail the work of the short-term rental work group. Watching them, I think they're really committed. And I think if you ask them to perhaps meet more frequently and come up with a recommendation for this town meeting, it would meet the expectations of the voters.
Thank you, Dan. I think the select board could ask, and they may or may not be ready, but I think it's going to be their choice. But we can, I think, gently push and say, is it a reality? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah, I don't see how they can do it, because it's not just getting a recommendation in place. It's then it's the PR, it's the public relations after, to convince people of why it's a good idea. And I just, and it's making sure that the data is complete and credible. Granicus has maybe half of it. There's another whole half of it that has to be collected still. So, I think I wish it wasn't that way. I agree with Dan that it would be great to be at this town meeting with it, but I'm not sure it would make sense, and I think we'll know in a month. I think they'll know when they try to, collect the data and put it together and sort of start having those discussions. I think we'll know pretty quickly. The other point about it, if it is a zoning, it's a 2/3 vote. So it's hard to get and it's easy to stop, so it's both ways. I mean, so if people haven't really bought in, a segment can stop it. So I think it's really important that it be done well and be fair and, and be supportable. So.
Yeah, I think this group wants to get it done, but it may not be possible. And I think I agree. We'll know in 4 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a rare occurrence to do something effectively for a town meeting this quickly. Particularly such a broad-reaching issue that there's a lot of unintended consequences that will need to be analyzed in regard to any proposal. And that's a lot to go through to actually get a positive vote and a positive 2/3 vote.
With a lot of people that feel really strongly both ways. And you saw that in the meeting yesterday.
And it's not like it has to be ready for May. It has to be ready for January.
Yeah.
And then the PR has to be ready to go.
And, to go with the example that was just given, if it's not on this town meeting and maybe other citizen warrant articles come up, by May, this group will be pretty close, if not kind of done. So we can say in town meeting, like, look, it took us a little longer, but here's what we have. It's coming in, for a special town meeting. So you could maybe not derail, but kind of hold off some of the citizen warrant articles who are maybe worried that nothing's going to come out of this group in time.
Just one other thought is if we're thinking that this is going to be a good candidate for a special, we should start thinking about what else should be in line for a special.
Yeah. Brooke, do you have anything?
No, I think, the timing of this is tough. We knew it was going to be tough when we got into the process of creating the work group. And I think doing it well trumps doing it fast. And I understand the risk of there being citizen warrant articles filed for this town meeting if the work group isn't ready. And I agree that there's a good case to be made to do exactly and to follow the will of the voters at town meeting, which was to have a work group look into this thoroughly and come to the best recommendation by consensus. And that I think we can make an argument to town meeting that that process is in progress and making progress, and that we ask the voters to push off any citizen warrant articles until that process can be completed. And again, 2/3 support for those will be challenging in the midst of an environment where the work group that town meeting asked us to create is still doing their work.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Brooke.
Okay, that's it for the town meeting update. The monthly town management report. I do not have a written report for you. However, I have some verbal updates, including Baxter Road alternative access is just an ongoing project and activity for staff in town admin and some other departments. We are deep into developing the fiscal 24 general fund budget. And we had a meeting today about some potential town admin requests, that some of which have been discussed by you all, like communications services and I can't even remember. There's a lot of project management facilities, things like that. We, some of us are very involved in collective bargaining preparations. Of course, annual town meeting is starting to pick up in development. We are really working on trying to get together some employee retention strategies and what those things might look like, how much money they might cost, are they, how to determine if they're effective. And we're trying to solicit some feedback through a small employee group. We're dealing with some facilities maintenance and management issues, including budgeting, staffing, and planning, as we have additional town facilities that are having to be taken care of and addressed. We are woefully understaffed in facilities, and we're probably going to be trying to seek some outside assistance as to what a good structure for our facilities department might be that could make it more effective, and that most likely is going to involve more staff and or professional services. Solid waste long-term planning. We are very well underway with planning for the end of the waste options contract in 2025. Brooke is on my little internal work group on that. We met yesterday with waste options, not necessarily about the contract expiration, but about some other issues. And we are working on an update for you all at your strategic plan workshop coming up in November. Stormwater planning, budgeting, staffing, we're working on that. As I mentioned, that's going to become a division within the sewer department. Preparation for the board's upcoming strategic plan workshop meeting in November. And you just talked about the short-term rental work group issues. I've been having some discussions with the facilitator and others about that, some of those issues. And we also are concurrently working on the implementation of the registration regulations that the Select Board and the Board of Health jointly approved a couple of months ago. And those are hopefully getting ready to get into effect as indicated in the regulations and the bylaw in January 2023. So those are some of the stuff, some of the items and activities that we're working on.
Thank you, Olivia. Any comments on that? Okay, any committee reports or comments, Select Board?
I just want,
Go.
Go ahead, Brooke.
no, I just want to reiterate that the solid waste planning progress is been really good, and it's been very interesting, and there's a lot to figure out in the next couple of years, but we're got the to-do list going, and we're making headway.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep, coastal resiliency met, and one of their questions to us was, what was the status of sediment transport? It was one of the sediment transport study. It was one of the top recommendations, and it's needed for a lot of the different issues. I know town's been working on an RFP, and so they asked for me to ask for that information. So it doesn't have to be tonight, but I'll bring it back next time we meet.
I believe that Mr. Turbot responded to that question earlier in the week.
Oh.
Sediment transport study, RFP.
All right.
I'll send that around.
Yeah, send it. That would be great. And I think the public, I'll talk about it when I get the answer.
I just got one comment on the short-term rental work group. I was disappointed to see that people weren't going to play by the ground rules when the ground rules have been established a long time ago. This is nothing against this particular group. I want them at the table. They have a lot of experience and a voice, but I was really disappointed to see that. That kind of, I felt that we have somebody at the table with their arms crossed saying, well, if I don't get what I want, then I'm going to go to the citizen warrant article. And that's exactly what we did not. We tried to bring a group together that did not do that. So I asked town council, could the select board or anybody remove anybody who didn't do the ground rules? And the answer is really no. It's not going to work that way. But I just was curious. That's what I don't want to have at this work group. We need open minds and working together. And it sounds like we have that majority. So I just wanted to encourage everyone to have some faith, and something really good can come out of this.
Yeah, I see that slightly differently, as you probably expect I would. It was interesting because it was interesting, and there was some ground rules set, and 8 people voted for it, and 1 person didn't, and then a couple of the people immediately went against the ground rules. They commented to the newspaper. One of the alternates got on last night and lambasted Julia, and so it's, if you have rules, are the rules there to, paint one person and one group into a corner, or is everyone going to follow the rules? And so I looked at it, I think it was kind of ironic, and I understand that the town, I understand there's a lot of self-interest in this, people's temperatures are pretty high, but I also think everyone has to, take a step back and treat each other with respect, and not attribute malice or attack. And I felt as though, some of that happened right after everyone voted and said they wouldn't do that. We're going to take the high road and we're not going to do that. And then minutes later they did. So, so I think it goes both ways. I think that the group is slightly, what's the word? Has slight bent one way. It's a good thing that it's a consensus. And if the tables was turned, and that was 3/4 of that group believed what Act Now believed, the shoe would be on the other foot, and I think you'd have the same thing. And so there are times when people, if you tried to muzzle one of us when we felt really strongly about something and we weren't allowed to talk to the public or talk to anyone in the public or talk to the newspaper, I think we would all say, no, I don't want to do that. So I look at it differently. I think that, someone has a right to, and if you don't agree, I think they should be talking about it like they did a bit at the table, but should be doing it more nicely.
I don't think we're thinking differently. I think we're saying the exact same thing. I just used one example, which was the main one. But I said, everyone, we have a great opportunity. Everyone needs to play by the same rules. So we're actually saying the same thing.
Yeah,
I just had more emphasis on one group.
Yeah, you had in one group, but the other group is doing the same thing and putting the.
I understand that. Mine was, if you go back and listen to what I said, it was everybody. I just used that main one.
Then I missed it. Thank you.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
I didn't see it.
You're the lucky one.
Any other comments? Okay, motion to adjourn
So moved.
Second.
by roll call. Don?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Jason, aye. Thank you.
Wow, nice.